Okay, today we're going to focus on finding the missing measurements. This is kind of like a puzzle when you're working with finding the missing measurements. Generally, the first thing we want to take a look at is, do we know like an entire length of something? So let's take a look at the top portion from A to F. So whenever we look at our distance from A to F, we can see that it's 9 units long. That tells me that from here to here, because we're looking at a rectangle, if we look at the big picture, we know that this is also going to be 9 units long. Now we can see that our image kind of splits here. So we've got our section from D to E, which it says here is 3 units. And we've got our section from B to C, which is unknown. So now if we think about this, if the entire distance is 9 units, and we've already used up 3, then we can do 9 minus the 3 that we've already used. And that's going to allow us to figure out our missing measurement, which means it's 6. So we know that from B to C is going to be 6 units. We can also take a look at our vertical piece. So let me erase some of this out of the way. If we look at our vertical distances now, do we know? Well, we don't know what our distance is from A to B. That's unknown at this point. We do know the distance from F to E is 3 units. And we know our distance from D to C is 2 units, which means that the entire height is going to be the 3 plus 2. So we know our distance from A to B is 5 units. Let's take a look at another example. Okay, again, let's look for whole distances that we have. Let's take a look at this side over here, and we can see that from A down to H, so from A to H, we can see that we are looking at 4 units. And if we continue, let's look straight across here. We look from G to F, and we see that that is 2 units. So we know that our entire height then has to be 6 units. If we come over to this side, it's also going to be true. So we know the entire height is 6 units. We can see that from D to E is 4 units. So from D to E is 4 units, which means that this missing piece from B to C has to be the leftover, so 6 minus 4, which leaves us with 2. So we know that the distance from B to C is 2 units. Let's take a look at our horizontal distances. We can see that the distance from A to B is 10 units, and we have that broken into 3 parts. We can see that from H to G is 5, so let's make our 10 line down here. So we know that this distance is 5. This distance is unknown, so we'll just leave that blank. And we know that from D to C is 3 units. So we're looking at 5 plus something plus 3. That's going to equal 10. Or we can say 10 minus 8, which is the 2 we know, which leaves us with a distance of 2 units. Okay. One more example. This one's a pretty complex one. Okay. So again, we're looking for big picture. Do we know a whole measurement of any side? Let's take a look at the vertical piece first. We know that from Q to P, we are looking at 4 units. And we know that from O to N, we are looking at 3 units, which means that we know that the entire piece, the entire height of this shape is 7 units. If we come over to this side, again, we know the entire shape is 7 units. Well, we can see that the top portion is 3. We have our middle portion, which is 2, and we have our unknown portion. So 3 plus 2, that's 5. If we take 5 away from the 7, that leaves us with 2 units. So we know that LM is 2 units. If we look at our horizontal distances, we can see the 10 right here, which is going to be important for us. So the entire piece is 10. So let's come down here and let's also list our 10 units across. We can see that from M to N, we are looking at 6 units. And from O to P, we have some unknown value. So since the entire thing was 10, 10 minus the 6 is going to leave us with 4 units. So we can see that that would also be 4 units long.